Hey everybody, welcome back to Patriot to the Core podcast on this special episode for September 29th. I wanted to do this because this is the 6th anniversary of the death of Mark, my brother. And so I thought I'd have on one of my brothers, Joseph, who's with us. I wanted to have my parents on at first, but they don't really like talking about much when it comes to Mark, and so especially in this setting. So I think it will work out much better having my bro here, Joseph. So Joseph, thanks for joining me.
Hey Thad, thanks for having me on.
It's late. It's late here for us both. We're trying to sound perky. Before we get started, though, I just want to ask you to please rate the podcast, and that will help many more people find it. And actually also subscribe in iTunes so you can automatically get downloaded the latest episode. Right now they're coming out every 2 weeks on Monday, except obviously this episode is a special one, so it's coming out on September 29th, which is Thursday. So let's go ahead, and we just wanted to just talk a little bit about Mark. And so this is a different type of episode. It is about Mark and some of the events that surrounding his death and the notification and just his life leading up to the military and maybe how life has been since. So I wanted to ask you first, Joseph, how did you find out about Mark's death?
Well, Thad, first let me tell you I really appreciate you doing this podcast and everything you've done to honor Mark and his legacy and the sacrifice that he made. I am somewhat uncomfortable in getting out in the open and talking about personal things, so I may not speak as eloquently as you do on these topics. But
you know I don't speak eloquently.
Well, you've had a lot more practice at it than I have. I'm kind of like Mom and Dad, tend to be fairly private. But when I was notified of Mark's death, I actually I had been not feeling well for a couple of days. I do believe he was killed on a Wednesday. And that week, that Monday and Tuesday, were the first days, I think, in my adult life that I had missed work because I was not feeling well. Nothing in particular. It was all non-specific, but just couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. And as a result, I was worn out. By Wednesday, I was dehydrated and just felt terrible. I had my wife take me to Wilford Hall Medical Center there at Lackland Air Force Base. We were living in San Antonio, and I worked at Lackland at the hospital. So I had her take me into the emergency room there, and I hadn't been in an emergency room as a patient, I don't think, since I was a kid getting stitched up.
Now you go all the time.
Yeah, now been back several times since. But she took me in, I got checked out, and they started some IV fluids, and I was just sitting there relaxing, and Patsy's phone had died, and she needed to take the kids home. Now, I knew I would be there for a while. They were going to give me a lot of fluids and just get me feeling better. So she had left to go take the kids back to the house, and then was going to come back later. And she had just walked out when my phone rang. And I saw it was Dad, so I answered it. And it was, I could tell in Dad's voice when he said my name. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I just said, "Dad, don't tell me that." And he said, "Yeah." And he started choking up, and I sat up on the side of that hospital bed, and he said, Mark's been killed." And all I could think of was, Patsy's leaving, doesn't have a phone for me to call her on, and our kids at that time, none of them had cell phones. So all I could think to do was I hung up on Daddy and pulled the IV, started running out of the hospital like a madman. I yanked the IV out of my arm, and blood started dripping across the floor, and I had people chasing me that they thought I was a mental patient, I think, and I hit the outside door and I saw Patsy going across the parking lot. I hollered at her. You know, a crowd had surrounded me by then. I think he thought I was seriously trying to escape or something. But anyway, she came across and we just had a moment right there in the parking lot, and I think we both sat down on the ground, and some people came around and.
So were things hanging from you while you were, was the
no,
anything?
No, I was in a hospital gown, and I'd already pulled the IV out. There was blood running down my arm from where the IV was in my arm, but there was nothing hanging out. I was just oblivious to that. I was kind of oblivious, which is uncharacteristic for me of being oblivious to other people around me. I tend to maybe worry a little too much about the image I'm presenting. So for me to sit in the middle of the parking lot, you know, crying with my wife, that took me by surprise. So, but you know, the folks, when they finally realized what was going on, there was a lot of, you know, I was at a military base, so they immediately started, you know, getting some assistance. It was no time at all before, you know, I had my boss there, and we were getting in the car driving to Haleville.
No, you didn't drive to Haleville yet.
No, not yet. Oh yeah, that's right. I was headed home. I did not go to Haleville yet.
Yeah, so all right, so let me just say from my side.
Yeah.
And then
now you may have to remind me of a few details, because I'll be honest with you, Thad, it's all a little bit blurry to me. I was sleep deprived and dehydrated, and then I got that news on top of it, and I'll be honest, I don't know that my memory is that clear of those hours.
Mine probably isn't either, but between the both of us, we can put some things together. But I didn't know that about you. I had no clue about the hospital and all that.
Well, to be honest, I had not told anyone.
But I'd gotten in from work, just changed into some crappy little basketball shorts, and sat down on the couch to watch Seinfeld. And I don't know what had happened. Me and Roz were just about to get in an argument for something.
Oh, no.
And then the knock on the door. Well, we heard a car door shut in the driveway. So the knock on the door came, and it was Andrew Bear and Sean Gleffy. So they were from the 2-1 at Pope. And so, yeah, as you know, that Mark had simultaneous notifications with Mom and Dad and then with me. So they told us the news while they were still there. Dad called. Roz answered the phone. And she said, hey, there's 2 men here from the Air Force, and so we'll be there soon. So we up and went to Haleville. Roz drove, and I made a few phone calls, and you called me. What I remember is you called me, and you said in this voice, you sounded like Papa, like our granddad, like a gruff old man. You said, Thad, they've taken our brother, or they've killed our brother, something like that. So you didn't sound good. And I guess now I know it was a combination of several things, but that's what I remember. And we went there, and when I got there, of course, they were making arrangements for Mark's body to arrive at Dover. And so that's when Bo Knight started making phone calls saying, look, we don't want them to fly commercial, because the Air Force is going to fly us up commercially. And right. So instead, we got a private plane with some nice folks out of Haleville, Mom and Dad and me, and then Bo and Sylvia and I, and then Barry and Sasha. I think that was it, plus the...
That's right.
Plus the pilot.
Now, Thad, I actually do remember that. Now, I don't remember calling you at all. You had mentioned that the other day that I'd called you, but I'll be honest, I do not remember making that phone call.
Well, maybe I called you.
No, I'm not sure. I don't remember talking to you about it. I do remember now what happened when he was coming into Dover that next day, wasn't he, on that Thursday?
Yep. Thursday evening.
That Thursday night. And I was able to get a flight out of San Antonio to Dover the next morning. And I remember it being a very early flight. And I also remember, for some reason, that was the first night I had slept in those 3 or 4 days. And I overslept. And I woke up, my alarm blaring and me still sleeping. And I just came out of bed, hollered at Patsy, and she jumped up, and I said, I'm going to miss my plane. And I remember, just like a madman, I grabbed my uniform out of the closet, jumped into the car. She drove, and I got dressed in the car, came out of the car at the airport.
Were the kids all in the vehicle with you?
They were asleep. No, Lauren was old enough. Okay. They were still asleep. This was 5:30 in the morning, and we took off. And at least I think they were asleep. I don't remember them being in the car because Patsy was driving very fast to get there on time. And when I jumped out of the car, I was half dressed, still buttoning up my shirt, trying to tie my tie. I got to security, and they were looking at me like something was wrong. And I told them where I was going, and they hurried me through. I had to get through, but some people let me get through the line, and I made it on that plane. And I remember thinking of all nights to get a good night's sleep. I had to, I missed this. But luckily I got on the plane. I had forgotten about that until you were just talking about it. But can I ask you, did you know before Mark left that he was going to request a simultaneous notification?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had told me that. I'd forgotten about it, but then I guess sometime later after it actually happened, I remember him telling me that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there's a whole, and a lot of this is all documented. Well, not a lot of this, what we're talking about now, but the notification process is documented in Mark's book, and how they all watched the houses for a while to make sure we were both home. And so, yeah, I remember arriving at Dover. It was pouring down rain. Mom was like, "There's Joseph," because somebody picked you up and driven you there, because you flew into Philadelphia or something, right? And they picked you up.
You're right. Someone from the base picked me up.
So
carried me to the VOQ, and I went in and got cleaned up a little bit, and then a few minutes later they took me over.
I mean, we didn't get there until 5 o'clock probably.
Yeah, I was already there in the little lounge area waiting when y'all got there, I think.
Well, we met you outside, it seems like. You were in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then, it was just raining like crazy, and so the little ceremony is outside. And so you looked at me and it's like, hey,
you remember what I told you?
Yeah. What'd you say?
You tell me what you remember.
Yeah, you said that it'll stop raining, I guarantee you. And I said, you're exactly right. It's going to stop raining because we need it to stop raining.
That's right. I didn't think there was any way it was going to rain through that, but I was wrong.
Yeah, it poured. It poured.
Yeah, and it got harder, I think.
So it was fitting. We did, when his plane finally arrived, Bobby came in and Colonel Armfield, and we went out there and for the short ceremony. And, there were there was another family there. And Calvin was one of the bodies there, but we didn't know the connection at the time, or I didn't. Did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, so
I did not.
And Calvin didn't have any family there, as far as we remember. But yeah, crazy time. Then you flew back with us on that plane to Haleville. I will say that it was an educational flight because I got to sit up front with a pilot, and I got to hear all the radio chatter from all the different airports, and then at one point I could see multiple cities in the air. Nashville, Birmingham. I mean, we were up so high it was crazy. The pilot was pointing them all out to me, and I don't know if you could hear all that going on up there, but that was before I fell asleep.
I think I might have slept the whole way.
So All right, so let's maybe we can just skip around a little bit because maybe lighten the mood for a minute. I would talk about Mark. Talk about Mark. When he was younger, and just what was he like, and what do you remember?
Well, as you know, your memory of our childhood is much better than mine. Now, Mark was 8 years younger than I am, but what I remember most about Mark was just how he was kind of mischievous, not in a bad way, but he didn't really back down from a challenge. If it came time to tackle anything, whether it be a bigger kid or climbing a tree or whatever he would do, I just remember Mark having a hard head and not giving up. He wasn't always very big. He was kind of little, actually, and pudgy as he went through his teens. But I remember when he started growing taller, if you remember, we liked to arm wrestle at the house, and I remember as he started getting into the military, or maybe it was right before he started in his military training, that he had kind of buffed up pretty good, and we arm wrestled, and I beat him, but it was very difficult, and I really think that's one of the reasons my shoulder hurts me to this day, was that last arm wrestling match.
I'm sure.
But I won, and I retired at that moment. I wouldn't give him another shot at the crown. I said, I'm going out a champion. That's one thing Mark always brought up. He said, come on, let's arm wrestle again. And he may have even mentioned it the day before he deployed. And I'm like, no, brother, I have retired the family champion. You don't get a shot at this crown. And I never did give him a chance to win. But he was persistent.
Yeah. You stuck to it by not letting him arm wrestle you again, and he sure did want to.
I know. No, yeah, he wanted to. I remember Mark. You remember that boot knife that he had when he was little?
No.
That was Mark, wasn't it? That stabbed himself in the thigh with a leg, running to the house carrying a knife.
Yeah, he did.
But I don't remember him crying about it. But he had this boot knife, this double-edged blade, and it was I don't know where we got it, a fair or flea market, or somebody gave it to him. I don't know, but he was going through the house carrying it, blade tipped down, and he ended up just stabbing himself right in the thigh. But I don't remember him crying about it. It was a pretty deep gash. He was always tough.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he had that vein that popped out in his neck when he got mad.
Yeah, and he could get mad.
Yeah, he did. And my son Jack has that same vein. It's not as pronounced, but he has one too. Yeah. Gets mad.
Yeah.
Dang. So, let me think. I was just trying to think of something else from the childhood, but I guess there's tons of stuff we could talk about on that. But
yeah.
So Mark went out to see you. You were living in Colorado Springs, and he went. Of course, we had some fun trips out there. At least me and Mark did. I don't know if it's fun for you and Patsy, but
no. Well, Patsy enjoyed it, but I enjoyed having y'all there. I was not good on the ski slopes, so that wasn't something I enjoyed.
Well, yeah, we could go on and on about the four-letter words that you invented.
Let's skip that. Yeah, they weren't really bad words because no one had ever heard them before.
But they really did pierce the soul. They were pretty powerful. I felt bad for them.
I promise you, they did not pierce as much as that mountain as I rolled down it.
Oh God! And then you said at one point you're like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm going down to the bottom and I'll wait for y'all. And you took the lift down,
that's right.
And it was like the wrong lift, and you had to end up walking a mile. In the boots.
It was further than that. I finally took those boots off and carried them, and finally, there were these buses that kept going by me. They weren't labeled. I didn't know what they were. And finally, I asked somebody who was standing there what looked like a bus stop. I said, hey, where does this bus go? And they said, oh, it takes you back to the lodge. I went, doggone it. So I got on it. I waited with that guy. I got on it. And it was the very next stop was the lodge. I couldn't have been 200 yards away from it. I'd been walking for, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes. I was miserable. My knee was swollen, and finally I get on the bus. I could have gotten on it right where I got off of that gondola.
That's funny.
But yeah, I spent the rest of the evening watching football and drinking hot chocolate. I had a great night.
Yeah. So we did feel bad for you there, but
yeah.
Of course, now, I mean, my time on the slopes wasn't just peaches, but it was much better than yours.
But you got back into it. I know you had skied before.
No.
And you'd never skied before, Thad?
Not before going out there with you, no.
I thought you had. Oh, maybe it was Mark.
Mark is the one that had skied when he was 14.
Yeah, but you picked it up quick. That makes me feel even worse, Thad, because I thought you had experience doing it, and I was the only.
No.
I thought I was the only inexperienced one there.
No, I mastered the wedge is all I did. I just go down and just turn the skis in.
Well, that's what they kept telling me. But I weigh about 40, 50 pounds more than you at the time, and my wedge turned into a snowplow.
Well, hey, on the bunny slope, when you took out that poor lady, I felt so bad for her, but man, it was just funny.
I told her to get out of my way.
I saw it from
she didn't move.
Me and Mark saw it from the ski lift. We saw it happening from there.
Yeah, I bet you did. It seems everyone saw it, trust me.
So,
hey, but, go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, I was going to say that it may have been the next trip or that. I don't know when, but it was just Mark that was there. You may have had to leave, and Mark stayed behind. Well, we were at the house, and me and Mark and my kids, and Patsy had gone out shopping or something, and I was grilling steaks, some tri-tip. And I brought it in, and I liked, to eat the burned ends off of it. So I was slicing it up, and I went ahead and popped that burnt end in. I was chewing it and went to swallow it, and it got stuck in my throat. And I could still talk, and I was clearing my throat. And Mark said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I got something stuck in my throat." And he said, "Do you need the Heimlich?" And I said, "Yeah, funny." So I took a drink of soda, and that piece of meat just went down and lodged. And soda started bubbling up, to my back of my nose, and I was choking. And at that point, I couldn't talk. And I looked at Mark, and I gave him the universal choking sign, and he said, "Seriously?" And I nodded my head. And he got behind me and started wailing on me. And it did not budge. And I kept giving him a thumbs up, like, keep going. And then he really got serious. And finally that piece of meat came up, and then I swallowed. It went right back down, and I gagged and threw up a little bit in the sink. And as I'm gathering myself and wiping the vomit off of my face, I looked up at him. I said, "Brother, I owe you one." I mean, if Mark hadn't have been there, I highly doubt one of my children could have saved me. I was looking over at the couch, going to drop myself on the back of the couch, but I'd probably be dead. I mean, if he hadn't have been standing there to do that, and it had to be Mark. Mark's taller than me. He could get the leverage.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
he really got it out of there, and I always thank him for that. And then it was either, I think, the day before that when we went whitewater rafting up on the Arkansas River there in Colorado.
Yeah, so tell me, let's talk about
you remember that?
No, I wasn't there.
Yeah, so that's right, you weren't. Well, we went up, and our guide, kind of a hippie-looking fella, long hair and kind of a odd-looking character. Well, me and Mark was kind of giving him a hard time when we got on the water about it being kind of weak. I mean, we really weren't hitting any rapids, and me and Mark were just teasing a little bit about, "Hey, is that all you got?" Whatever. Well, I guess he heard us, because Mark was on the front left corner of the boat, and I was right behind him. And we started down these rapids, and I know that guide intentionally turned our corner right into it. And we hit this hole, and the front of the boat went under, and I saw Mark go under, and I kind of leaned forward, and when the boat came out, Mark wasn't on it anymore. He had disappeared. And I was leaning forward, trying to see if I could see him, and he hit another bump, and I went flying out of that boat. It was like getting bucked off a horse. And I hit the water, and, the current was so bad, it really the water was deep enough to where I couldn't get my feet on the bottom to kick out of it. And I couldn't get my head above, and the water was just churning, and it was so cold. And there was a moment after I struggled, I remember just relaxing. And to this day, I remember in my head thinking, I have always been scared of drowning and never wanted to die that way, but, it's really not that bad. And I kind of just relaxed, and I thought, this is where it ends. And about that time, the life jacket worked, and my head popped up out of the water, and I breathed, and I said, okay, well, this is better. Breathing is good. So then I started looking for Mark, and I was yelling, Mark, and I looked, and I saw his head pop up. Well, in the safety briefing, before we got into the water, I distinctly remember that guide saying, if you fall out of the boat, if two of you fall out of the boat, just hold on to each other's paddles and float down together. You'll eventually get to the side. Just stick together, right? So what do? I listen to instructions. So Mark's head comes up. I'm yelling at him. He's not too far away from me, but he's further than an arm's reach. I'm like, Mark, give me your paddle. And he goes, what? Give me your paddle. So he throws it at me. He threw it like over my head. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he starts swimming. He makes it all the way to the shore, and I'm still trying to gather up his paddle along with mine. So he gets on the shore, and I finally end up several yards down from him, and we're laying there on the bank waiting for somebody to come get us, and we're both coughing and just really spitting up a lot of water. And we sat there and talked, and he said, Joe, how close did you come to drowning back there? I said, Mark, I thought I was a goner. I'd already given up. He goes, yeah, me too. And I said, let's not talk about this to Patsy. She probably don't want to hear any of this. Patsy's, my wife. And it seems nobody else probably knows that. But so we didn't talk about it for a little while, but we finally said, yeah, we both kind of thought we were goners there. And then it was the next day I choked on that steak. But, Mark, both times I had two near-death experiences with Mark, so it kind of brought us a little closer.
Mm-hmm. So what happened to everybody else in the boat? Did anybody else get thrown out?
Nobody else fell out. It was just me and Mark. And I fancy he and I being the most athletic in the group, but we got bucked out quickest. Everybody else was fine. I think it was the guy. We probably ran our mouths a little too much.
Yeah.
He got us. And we congratulated him on that once we got our composure and got back in the boat. We said, you know what? We probably deserved that. Good. That was a good job. You did it right. Thank you. Some people have been upset, but Mark and I we kind of enjoyed it after we realized we weren't dead.
Well, we probably need to let everybody know, for those who don't, that when we get together, we could be quite overwhelming and maybe even obnoxious.
Well, that was back in the day. I think we've matured a little bit.
We have. But you got us three together, or I guess just you and Mark. It could be a lot for just about anybody to handle.
Well, any combination of the Forster brothers were a lot. If you throw three of us in the mix, it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
it's about more than most people can take.
You took out a lady on the slopes. I hurt a lady in the lazy river at Schlitterbahn. I mean, it's not intentional. That's right. It just gets rough, right. And it just happens. And so
Mark somehow always avoided hurting people. Me and you tended to plow people over, but he was a little more graceful, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, yeah. Those trips to Colorado and then that one winter we can't coming back. Oh my gosh, that when the big blizzard came.
We were with Madsen.
Yeah, and so we had already damaged the good folks' snowmobiles.
Let's not go there. Let's not talk about that one.
We're trying to leave and head back over into Colorado Springs, and they're telling us, hey, the storm's coming, the blizzard's coming, Floyd Hill's going to be closed. Yeah. So we're trying to beat it. Well, we decided to turn around and go back. But at some point, we decided to just go for it, and we're stuck on Floyd Hill for hours. Hours. Right. I mean, so long that, the girls were squatting around in a circle peeing in the road.
That's right.
And I walked up to a truck, said, "Hey man, can I take a leak behind your truck?" It's like, "Yeah, go right there." And so, but you and Mark, y'all took off. I thought y'all were just going to observe things, but y'all
Yeah.
were actually up there pushing cars basically over the crest of the mountain, right?
Well, when we got up there, there were some cars that were they didn't need far to go before they could get over the hump. And if we could get those out of the way, there were some trucks and stuff that could start moving. And so, it wasn't just me and Mark, but a lot of men that were standing there, we all just started talking. Said, hey, why don't we just start pushing people? I mean, there's enough of us here. Let's just start pushing. And so we started pushing. And pretty soon, it took a little while, but we all got over that hill.
Yeah, it took a long time. I felt pretty bad. When y'all came back, I've been sitting there in that warm vehicle. I mean, we got out some, but we just were sitting there.
Me and Mark would rather be kind of doing something than sitting.
Yeah.
So, plus, I really needed to use the bathroom, and getting up, moving around, kind of kept my mind off of it.
Yeah, that was misery that night. We thought we were going to be sleeping there, I guess.
That was a bad night. Yeah, another reason I needed to move out of Colorado, the snow. Tough on a Southern boy.
Yeah, you still don't.
But Mark, when he came out to see us a couple times. He enjoyed being out there. But what I enjoyed most was Mark really was a family man. You know, he enjoyed being around his family, not only his brothers and mom and dad and Terry, his sister, but he liked being around his nieces and nephews. And Mark was a good uncle to my kids. We've got a lot of pictures from those trips when he came out to see us, and we still go through them every now and then with the kiddos. And because a couple of my kids were so young, they're starting to kind of forget Mark a little bit, I think. And but when we show them the pictures, they remember Mark spending time with them. So, it was good to have him come out. It took a lot of effort. You know, he was single, so he didn't have that family dynamic that he had to worry about. So it was nice when he had free time when he would come out and visit.
Yeah,
I know you got to spend a lot more time with him because y'all were roommates and stuff, but, it meant a lot to me and Patsy and the kids to have Mark come spend time with us.
Yeah. Well, it was fun. I know he enjoyed it because I did too when I was there. So I liked traveling with him and going out there and seeing y'all. Well, what you said you had the pictures and stuff with you. What have you done to help your kids? Because you've had a few kids since Mark's death, and then some of yours were younger. So what have you done to help them? To keep his memory alive with them, and to teach them about him.
I probably don't do enough, Thad, to be honest with you. Part of me feels a little bit, uncomfortable talking too much about Mark because I know he would not want me to do that. Mark didn't like being the center of attention, and he'd kind of, I think, would say, hey, why don't y'all just get on with it? You don't have to keep talking about me. I'll be just fine. But I was sitting there the other day in the house. We were kind of straightening up, and I looked around. I said, our living room looks kind of like a Mark shrine. We've got pictures on the wall of Mark, and almost every shelf has some picture or another. And without even realizing it, I believe there's about 6 pictures of Mark in our living room. And then, in the kids' rooms, we have some pictures up, and we do a lot. I guess a lot of it goes unsaid. One of the kids, I can't remember which one, had to do a book report, so they used your book. I can't remember when we did that, if it was last year or the year before, but that was nice because they had to read it, and I helped them write it. And there have been other instances where they needed to write about one of their heroes, and I've encouraged them to use Mark as that example. And I know at least one of the kids has done that. Our kids, between the 4 that are in school now, there's probably been 4 or 5 book reports or either some kind of essay written about Mark just out of here. So I probably don't do enough, but, he's definitely visible in our house.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Well, and he is here too. And, we all at least have that portrait that Phil Taylor painted for us from the American Fallen Soldiers Project, and that was nice that we all got a copy of that. And so, of course, then the plenty other pictures we have. I wanted to tell you about one or two. Sometimes does something ever happen, or you see something, you're, man, I wish I could tell Mark about that.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Or maybe you're even instinctively you start to think, I'm gonna call Mark and tell him.
Mm-hmm. I still do that. Yeah.
Okay, I have that happen, but I kept thinking this happened to me, but actually it was Mark this happened to when we were living together in Tuscaloosa. He came in and told me he saw this truck going down the road over the bridge, and there was it was a pickup truck, and a rather large lady, there was a mattress in the back of it, and a rather large lady was laying spread eagle on the mattress, holding it in. Holding
it down?
Yeah, as he's driving over the bridge. So he's going regular speed, probably at least 50 miles an hour. Anyway,
oh my goodness.
Mark that just got him. He loved that one. But he didn't get a picture of it. Couldn't get a picture, but that's always a funny story for me to think about.
Yeah, I can see Mark would laugh at that.
And then one time, me and Mark went to Utah together, and we were in downtown Salt Lake City. And he had a friend or two there he was wanting to see, and but it was just he and I, and we walked out of Temple Square, and there was a guy standing there with some sign. He was protesting something. There's always somebody down there doing that. And I served there as a missionary, and so we didn't really, engage those people. But I wasn't a missionary at this time. It was years later, and I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. So he had some stupid cause. He was fighting against the LDS church, and so me and Mark just started in heckling him. And we could do it, as you can imagine. I mean, because you'd be the same way. We could kind of feed off each other really good. And then the guy started getting angry, and he deserved everything he got, right? He started pointing at us. Well, he was missing. His index finger was cut off. At least halfway it was missing.
Oh, no.
So Mark laughed at him and gave him a hard time about that. And the guy was just really like full of hate, anger. Anyway, we heckled him, and we walked off, and the guy's like, y'all have a nice day. And Mark's like, don't say that when you really want us to get hit by a car. But anyway, he picked up his stuff and he left. And I was like, Mark, I hope we did a good enough job with him, but I don't know. And Mark said that he packed up his stuff and left. I was like, yeah, but his shift might have been over, so maybe he was planning on leaving anyway. But anyway, that was a fun time. So one thing too is when Mark was looking at joining the military, he talked to you a lot.
Yeah.
So, what did y'all talk about, and how did he get down to combat control?
Well, I kept trying to encourage Mark to either go to medical school or dental school, and he kind of hemmed and hawed. But once he decided he wanted to join the military, when that hit him, he knew right away he wanted to be in some sort of special forces or special operations. And of course, we'd all heard of Navy SEALs, so I think he was kind of leaning that way. Well, since I'm in the Air Force, I said, Mark, look, bud, if you're going to join the military, get into the Air Force so that you can get a marketable skill. I mean, being a Navy SEAL is great, but what do you have when you get out? Are you going to be a mercenary? What are you going to be when you get out? And I was a little ignorant to exactly what the Navy SEALs did, everything as well. So, but I thought we need to find you a job in the Air Force that will give you a skill when you get out that's marketable. But I really encouraged him, like everyone else, get your degree first. So he was working towards his degree, and he came down to visit me. I was at Lackland, and this would have been, this would have been 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, I believe. And I'd heard of the PJs, and I knew the PJs had a schoolhouse there at Lackland. So I called around, and they said, yeah, just bring your brother by. We'd be glad to show him around. So Mark came to visit. I took him over there to the PJ house. Didn't know anyone there, really, but dropped him off. And I told Mark, well, I guess I'll come back and pick you up later. And I came back, and he got in the truck, and he goes, I know what I want to do. I want to be a combat controller. And I'm like, what is a combat controller? so he started to tell me, and he told me that the guy at the PJs, after walking him around, he goes, man, we'd love to have you in the PJs, but why don't you go down the street here and go to the combat control school? And Mark went down, and that's where he realized, I believe that's where he made his decision that, hey, this is the job I want. It just really impressed him, the caliber of individuals that were there. I wish I knew who it was that gave him that tour.
I do too.
Do you happen to know who that was?
No clue.
I don't know. Maybe he's listening, but I don't know who toured him around that day. Had I known how this would have all worked out, I would have gone back and written down their names. But I'll be honest, there was a selfish reason why I wanted him to join the Air Force, and I never really verbalized this to him or to anyone else. But in my mind, I said, we hear every day of Navy SEAL and Green Beret and all these guys getting killed in action. But we don't hear anything about Air Force guys getting killed. So they must not be going into harm's way. I'm active duty in the medical corps, which is very different than the operational side of the military, but I was completely naive to the job that PJs or combat controllers do. And I selfishly pushed him towards the Air Force because I didn't think he would be in harm's way, at least not to the extent that the Special Forces and the other branches are. So little did I know how this would work out. If had I known, I certainly wouldn't have encouraged it. But that's once he made up his mind, there was no talking him out of it. So I kept pushing him to get your degree, and I kept thinking, well, he's going to meet a girl, he's going to get married, and that'll be the end of this madness. He'll give up this dream of joining, special tactics. But that didn't happen. He did get married. He did, and he ended up enlisting. And I tried to get him to go in as an officer, and he didn't want to do that either. So he enlisted.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's that hard head again.
Yeah. Well,
once he made up his mind, it's just like when he was a little kid. When he made up his mind, he was going to do it, and
True.
then nothing none of us could have done to talk. We couldn't have talked him out of it if we even tried.
Well, I think lots of people tried, at least to get him to go in as an officer, and I didn't even really know what that meant, but I tried too.
No, well, I think it's the officer side. You maybe make a little more money, maybe a little less dangerous. And maybe that's true to some extent, but as you and I have gotten to know a lot of combat controllers and other special tactic operators, officer enlisted alike, they're all putting their neck out on the line.
Yeah.
We had perceptions that turn out to be wrong.
That's right. I mean, our lives have been open to a whole new world. With all these different people we've met and continue to meet, the jobs they do.
Absolutely.
So when there was a lot of things happening so Mark was killed on a Wednesday. His funeral was not until the next Thursday, so 8 days later.
That's right.
Like October 7th, I think. And so that was, there was an autopsy performed. We never knew when his body was going to be brought back home to Haleville. So when it was, you being in the military were able to escort Mark's body from Dover to Haleville. And we call that's part of the Angel flight, or that specific flight was the dignified arrival, correct?
Is it the dignified transfer? One of those.
I think the dignified transfer was to Dover, and the arrival was to Haleville.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
So, and this is, a lot of people just don't know. I think most people aren't aware of, notifications and then the Angel flight. And so from what I understand, you flew back up there, I guess from Haleville. Yeah, you flew from Haleville, right, to Dover.
I flew from Haleville.
Okay.
I was up there with the family, and, I was here again, never experiencing anything like that before. I found out it's actually an official duty for military members to do that, to be part of that flight. So I was put on orders. I still have those orders. I keep those in my desk at work, and where that was my assignment. My duty was to escort Mark's body back home. So, of course, I went in full uniform, and that was a very special time for me. I personally did a lot of praying, a lot of meditating as I was riding on that plane. It was just, there were two pilots. It was a very small plane. And then it was me and Mark in the back. I could sit there with my hand on the casket, and, I didn't audibly talk to him, but in my mind, I tried to just talk to him a little bit. And I gained a lot of closure for that. I feel bad for the rest of the family who didn't have that opportunity to do it. I wish we all could have, because that was a few hours in the air where it's just me and him, and that was that's something that I'll always cherish, that memory.
What was the
feeling? It fades a little bit. I was very nervous to begin with, and by nervous, maybe I was more anxious because it was real. Before, I don't know, knowing we were going home to a funeral made it seem more like reality. For a while there, it just seemed like a bad dream that we would eventually wake up from. But sitting there and talking with him, it became, that sunk in, I think, completely for me. I had an opportunity, but by the time that flight landed and we came into Haleyville and we circled the airport and saw there was a bunch of people gathered out there. I don't know how many, but from the air, it looked like a whole lot of people. And by the time I landed, I was at peace. I wish you would have had that opportunity that I had, and it was pretty special. It's hard to describe. There were some personal moments and some things that came to me that I felt, and just maybe some inspiration that I felt like I had while I was there that just helped comfort me. I guard a lot of things personal, and I don't share a lot. I talk to my wife about some of the feelings I had when I was there, and maybe one day offline I can talk to you as well. But by the time I landed, Brad, I was at peace, and to come off that plane and see everyone standing there, I shed some more tears, but I did most of my grieving there in the back of that plane and was able to get through it. So I don't allow myself much time to shed many tears anymore. I know that sounds callous, but around this time of year, around the 29th, I'll find a quiet moment somewhere, and that's when I'll allow myself to, grieve a little bit.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
And then I'll lock it up for another year.
Yep, you gotta lock it up. Yep,
that's right.
That's right. Well,
I could hear Mark saying that to us. He would. Right. If we started, getting a little emotional, he'd lean over and say, "Hey, you better lock it up."
Yep, that's right.
So we do, and we still do that to each other now. And I tell Daddy that, because Daddy can't hardly get through a conversation without getting choked up, and that's odd for you and me, right? Because did we ever see Daddy get choked up in his life?
No, never.
So to see Dad get emotional is, one, kind of terrifying, and two, it just is not what we're used to. So we're always telling Dad, lock it up. Lock it up. Change the subject. Let's talk about football.
Well, that morning at the airport, it was relatively early, when y'all came in. And did you go up the day before? Or did you just leave at like 3 a.m. or something?
Gosh, man, now you're really testing my memory. I don't remember. I think I left the day before.
Okay.
I spent the night there, and then the next morning early. Yeah, that's why. I'm almost sure that's what happened. But to be honest, it's a little bit, I don't remember those kind of details.
Okay, so you didn't see Mark the day before. You didn't see that, you weren't there until you met the casket to get ready to go on the plane. Is that right?
Meaning see the casket before?
Yeah.
Or, no, okay. I didn't.
Okay.
I did not until they brought him onto the plane.
Okay. So when y'all arrived, and it was pretty early in the morning, and I remember this was like early October, and it was a pretty cool morning, and I didn't have clothes. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have all my clothes,
cold.
you know. So, but when we were driving to the airport there in Haleville, and for those who don't know, this is obviously a very small little municipal airport. Out, you know, there's not much around it. There's like a golf course, country club. And there were some people standing out in their yard with a sign or with a flag or something now. And then the Patriot Guard Riders were there, some of them. And that's a whole other topic that I could go in detail, but I've definitely talked about it in the book. There's videos out there of the PGR and what went on behind the scenes, and you know how early they were in town for everything. But yeah, they were there, and it was an incredible thing to be part of. And yeah, I remember you getting in the vehicle with us. It was Mom and Dad, and I guess me and Roz, and you jumped in, or you and Patsy jumped in, and so and you definitely seemed at peace. But you know, the support we saw driving down the road from there to the funeral home, there were people everywhere on the sides of the road.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
That the town really came out.
Yeah.
To support, you know, to recognize Mark and support our family. It was made you proud to be from Haleville, Alabama that day.
It did. It did. There were signs, you know, every church or building that had those signs where you put the different letters up. So I mean, it was all something about Mark or the Forster family.
And it stayed up for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, we had, I mean, there were, you know, the cleaners, the dry cleaners wouldn't charge any money for cleaning. A lady from the barbershop called, or from a hairstylist called and said, hey, is there anybody there that needs some haircuts? We want to cut your hair. And I took Chad Hall and Calvin Markham up there, and they got haircuts, and they wouldn't let them pay. So they ended up like buying something from them. Anyway, just great folks.
No, they really were. Great town.
So, has there been anything that you've learned about Mark since that you just didn't know?
You know, there's that one story that stands out that I had never heard when he was down in Biloxi at Keesler Air Force Base doing training. And Mark, I mean, he at the time, I don't know if he was an A1C, an Airman First Class, or a senior airman, but still fairly young in the enlisted ranks. Although Mark was, you know, in his late 20s, in the enlisted ranks, he was young in the Air Force. And they were at I believe a little restaurant, little family type restaurant, eating. And, you know, a bunch of military guys together, and they were getting a little bit rowdy. And I guess some of them were, you know, saying some things that were probably not appropriate for a family restaurant. And there were families sitting around, and if I remember the story correctly, Mark, you know, kind of stood up and said, hey, you know, knock it off. We're better than this. There's families around here. And what struck me in this story was that no one told him to sit down. No one was offended. They complied. And they calmed down, and they realized, you know, Mark is right. We're better than this. And they continued on with their meal and had and they were able to get through it and still have fun and not be offensive to those around them. But people were not offended by Mark doing that. Because while Mark, before I say that, Ish Villegas and Emily Adams came to visit me a couple months after Mark died. I was at Lackland at the hospital, and they just showed up one day, and we went to lunch, and they said, Joseph, we wanted to talk to you about Mark. And I said, okay. They said, you know how when somebody dies, we all tend to remember the good things and only say the good things. You don't go up to a guy's family who just got killed and tell him what a jerk he was, right? So you always mention the good things. I said, yeah, I do. I know how that's human nature. That's the right thing to do. And they said, yes, but we want you and your family to know that all of these things you're hearing about Mark, there's not something that we're not telling you. that's really who Mark was. We know you remember him as that wholesome, good man, and that's how we know him too. Even in battle, while he was aggressive and, demonstrative, he never lost his morals. He never compromised who he was. And I told them at the time, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I didn't ask them that question. They didn't have to come tell me that. But that had been on my mind. And I was really worried that we as a family were maybe building him up to be something he really wasn't. I didn't know, because we knew him as a brother, right? So when they told me that, I felt so much better, knowing that he left this world not compromised, that he stayed true to how Mom and Dad raised him. And that meant a lot to me, simple things like his coworkers would just try to get him to say a cuss word, and he got mad at him. He goes, why do you try to keep getting me to cuss? I'm not going to do it. I mean, this is a grown man in special operations. And the bad thing that his friends are trying to get him to do is say a cuss word.
Yeah.
I wish I was that good. Okay. I wish I was as strong as that. So I use our little brother as kind of a role model for myself, that, even though, he's younger, but I still look up to him. So anyway, I said enough about that, but those things that we heard after he died, things that I didn't know he had done and said, and the fact that everyone loved him, even though he did not participate in certain things.
Yeah.
But the thing you always heard about Mark was that he wasn't judgmental. He wasn't, pushy with his religion or his beliefs. He simply lived what he believed. And he didn't judge others harshly for not living that same way. He was still friends with them. He encouraged, and he had a special personality that attracted people to him, and people felt better for being around him.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is a unique. Those are unique characteristics to have as many good qualities in one man as Mark, the way we know him and the way his friends remember him.
Yeah.
So me and you had talked about that. We worried that people were going to think we were just trying to build him up because he was our brother, and we don't say bad things about people who die. But by all accounts, and he stayed true. Yeah. And now that should be our charge going forward, is to be like Mark, to try and live the type of life that he lived. And if you and I can get through this life saying that, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, even I think about it too. I mean, he motivates me. Like when I'm working out, I think about how Mark transformed his body, and of course, in his career, he had to do some serious working out, and so it helps push me a little more.
Anybody who knew Mark growing up, I mean, look at his senior portrait hanging on Mom's wall. He went through a metamorphosis.
Yeah, he did.
From the time he left for his mission at 19 until the time he joined the military, it's hard to recognize that same kid.
It is.
I mean, he really put in hours to transform his physique. I mean, I was a little bit jealous, but not jealous enough to work as hard as he did.
Well, he did. He got serious about it. I mean,
He did.
Flat stomach and broad shoulders.
Yeah, it was always a little unnerving when we'd be at Mom's pool and my wife would say, "Hey, Mark, why don't you just take your shirt off?" I'm like, I'm sitting right here. I mean, I hear everything you're saying. She goes, oh, it's nothing. He's like my little brother. I said, well, I don't hear you asking your other brothers to take their shirts off. So,
hey,
but of course, and Mark would comply and take his shirt off.
Oh,
thanks,
sure.
Mark. Appreciate it.
Well, my wife and her sister did the same thing.
Yeah, well, I can't say that I blame them. Why not?
So what do you think was going through Mark's head during those final moments, those intense moments?
Well, I think that because he had lived the kind of life he had lived up to that point, I highly doubt he had any regrets knowing what might happen. I fully suspect he was at peace with the Lord, and I would imagine doing what he was doing where he was doing it, he knew every day he got up could be his last. So I'm pretty sure he was prepared to die, having no regrets. But knowing Mark and how hard-headed he is or was, I doubt he thought he was actually going to die. I guarantee you he thought he could go out into that open area, find Calvin, retrieve him, and take out all the bad guys and not get hurt. I could just see in his head, I doubt he expected to die. But he was prepared for it if it happened. It's kind of how I see it. I don't know. What about you? What have you thought as you've thought about that?
I just, I've thought about it a lot too, and just an opinion is that I feel like it was like, I got work to do. I mean, here I've got to.
That's right.
This is the mission. This is what I'm here to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just kind of a matter of fact. I think there probably was some fear in there, but nothing that would distract him or cause him to not do what he felt he needed to do. And so he was working. He was doing his job, and of course, I don't know what all was going on. I'm sure there was some confusion.
Yeah.
Who knows? But there was also a lot of determination and bravery, and probably not just by him, but others that were somewhere around there.
The sad thing, remember that video, the helmet cam footage we have where they're in that gunfight, and there's the Afghani army guys hunkering down behind the wall and just sticking their gun up and shooting, and Mark is telling them, no, you got to look at them and shoot them, and he's showing them how, and he's pacing. We can tell from the helmet, he's just pacing back and forth, and he's talking on the radio, and he's going up to the Humvee and talking to the officer that was in there, and he never stopped moving, and he also never took cover, if you remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mark was scared. And what makes me think about that is one of his friends, it may have been Bobby, that told me, Joseph, you wouldn't have recognized him out there. When he got into a fight, it was like a switch flipped, and he went into beast mode. And it became, you're right, he had a mission to do, and he was going to do it, and nothing was going to stop him. And that's that hard-headedness. And so when Calvin wasn't responding, or however Mark realized that Calvin wasn't responding or there, he couldn't see him, I doubt he ever gave it much of a thought. I bet he hit that door as soon as, he could, because that was the right thing to do in his mind.
I do too.
And but I don't think he had any thought of dying. I don't think he thought he was going to die that day. That's just my opinion. But I'm convinced he was at peace with it.
Sure.
And if that was his day, if that was his day, he was ready to go.
Yeah. Well, he knew the realities. at some point, if it wasn't that day, he knew him when he left, and so yeah, he was as prepared as anybody could be. And and there's stories, we won't talk about them now, but we could go on and on just about but they're in the book. Of what went on that day earlier. With them.
Right.
I guess singing to Guns N' Roses and asking the pilots their favorite groups, and Mark jumping out in the middle of the field like a big dummy. He says, "Hey, I'm right here in the middle of the field like a big dummy," and just trying to pinpoint so the pilots could see where he and his team were. So he really was. I think he was in his element for sure. He was made for that role.
And by all accounts, he wasn't careless.
Yeah, right.
But he was fearless, and he was relentless in accomplishing the mission. But I worried about that. I've asked several of his teammates. I asked Wes Wilson, who was his team captain. I said, "Was he careless?" And he goes, "No, absolutely not. He was very careful, but he was relentless." So that meant a lot to me as well, that he wasn't just out looking to catch a bullet. He was actually, following his training, following the plan, not putting his teammates at risk. By all accounts, I wasn't there, obviously, but I don't know. All of those things for me give me a little bit of solace. I'm knowing how Mark died, knowing the circumstances around it. I miss my brother, but I get a lot of solace. I don't know if Mom and Dad do, but just knowing the circumstances has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Feel some pride in it. Obviously, I'd rather have him back. I would have rather him not gone. I'd have loved him just as much, obviously, but we're pretty lucky in that we've been given a lot of insight into his life downrange and how he died. And I don't know that all families get that.
No.
There's a lot of people lose family members and never know the circumstances around it. And we've been blessed in that we've been given ample information.
Yeah, he wasn't captured. He wasn't
right.
tortured. As far as we know, he didn't suffer.
My goodness, the families that have to go through stuff like that, I couldn't imagine what that would be like. So,
I know.
Yeah, if you got to lose someone, we've been given a lot of information and new friends that have helped us through it.
Yep. Well, let's wrap it up, bro. Anything you want to say in closing?
No, I appreciate you doing this, Thad, and for asking me to participate. I hesitated, but you've done so much for the family by yourself. You have really taken on that role, and I appreciate you doing it. And I thought about it, and I talked to my wife, and I said, as bad as I hate to hear my voice recorded, and I don't like to open up too much about personal stuff, I'm going to do this with Thad. And I appreciate you asking me to do it.
Well, shoot, I'm glad. I hope that it's good for you too, because I appreciate you doing it. It's obviously not convenient. This is late at night, and we're both tired, and I'm sure you're more tired than I am. But crap, bro. I can't stand hearing my voice when I go back and listen to these things. I'm like, good gosh, Thad, come on, spit your words out. But
yeah.
But anyway, let's. I guess we'll wrap it up. And by the way, when I finish, hang on, too, because I'm.
Well, I choked a little bit earlier. Something went down the wrong pipe when I was eating, and so my voice is a little bit raspy tonight too. But this was worth doing. I appreciate you doing it.
Good. Well, there's a lot more to Mark so listeners, you go check out his book, My Brother in Arms. There's plenty about him online at markaforster.com. This podcast is not about Mark. Now, this episode is, but the podcast was not created to be about Mark. It's about great people that we've met, most of them because of Mark, but not all of them. So Mark definitely influenced the creation of this podcast, but there's a lot of great people we want to highlight, but today we want to honor our brother and remember him. And so learn more about him at markaforester.com. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, online about him. National Geographic did an episode of their series that was called Eyewitness War back in 2013. And Mark's I think his is called Fallen Hero. And so there's a big segment on there about him with some helmet cam footage. Lifetime Channel did a show on Mark back in 2011 called Coming Home. And his episode is called, what was it called, Joe? I forgot what it's called. It was episode number 3 or 4. I forgot what it's called right now. Paying Tribute. That was the name of it. Paying Tribute.
That's it.
There is a 1/6 scale warrior being created of Mark right now by Black Ops Toys. That's going to be coming out. I mean, shoot, there'll be pre-orders coming out very soon. It's awesome. You've seen some pictures.
I'm gonna get one of those myself.
Man, it is so cool. The detail and the moles on his face, and so there's a lot out there. And so please feel free. We'd love for you to learn more about him. Order his book. You can order it from the website Mark A. Forester, or you can order it from Amazon, or just go to your daggum bookstore. You can buy it if you want. If they don't have it, they'll order it for you. You can also get it on Kindle. So anyway, it's been good. And Joseph, by the way, I've had this during at least half of this conversation. I've had this shaking in my stomach, and it was the same feeling I had like for weeks, from his death on. The anxiety, I don't know why, just the anxiousness, no time to sit and rest because there's always tons to do. And by the way, I had some time with Mark too. I don't know if you know that, but I did get up one morning early and went to the funeral home early because I knew Tim Peaker got up early, and so I just got kind of.
I did not know that.
There were people everywhere, all the time.
Right.
And which was, hey, I mean, people were great, but I needed some alone time, some quiet time, so I took it. I think it was the day of the funeral, so it was that Thursday morning. I went up there early and spent some time, so that was good.
Yeah, well, good. I didn't know you'd done that.
All right, bro. Well, thank you for doing it. Thanks for talking so late. I hope you get some rest. And everybody
you bet that.
Listening to the podcast, thank you. Please go rate it. Please subscribe. And tune in for another episode that'll be about some other great American.